Okay, I'm still Veli-Pekka here. So this time I will talk about LTE U, not only LTE U, but as well LAA and all the aspects that this unlicensed LTE brings here and how it impacts Wi-Fi environments. And I have some quite detailed information here, so I hope you can kind of bear with me there while I walk through this. I hope this will be useful. Of course, it's a controversial topic, and there are different opinions. So I will present some facts, and hopefully that will help you to make your own conclusions. Here is some data from Cable Labs. They made a measurement where they put LTE transmitter on, they duty cycled that, and then they measured Wi-Fi throughput. And they come up with the result that when the LTE U, LTE transmitter is 50% of the time on with 50% duty cycle, Wi-Fi throughput is degraded by 70%. So that's the, without any precautions or kind of coexistent technologies, this is how the LTE and Wi-Fi coexist. They really don't coexist very well. I think that's well known. So Wi-Fi seems to be losing. Here is another statement from Qualcomm. LTE is a better neighbor than Wi-Fi is for Wi-Fi itself. So quite an opposite statement. In their testing, they found that LTE as a neighbor actually gives Wi-Fi better throughput. So quite an opposite statement compared to the previous test results from Cable Labs. So there are obviously different statements based on different type of test scenarios. And it makes making the conclusions and trying to stay on the facts, it makes that hard. So Peter Thornycroft already covered this partly, but what's the purpose of this unlicensed? So the purpose is to give more bandwidth for mobile operators, mobile networks, by using an anchor carrier in the licensed band, so LTE carrier into LTE frequencies, and then using another carrier in the unlicensed band, which may use LTE modulation, or it might use Wi-Fi. And then pair these two and get more data through and get more capacity. So this is, of course, the goal. And it's a goal of 5G to somehow bring these together. But in fact, this functionality is already key functionality in a gigabit LTE networks, which is 4.5G and not 5G. And gigabit LTE networks are already being deployed or have been already deployed in a number of locations. So these technologies are already in use. There are different types of technologies, kind of different categories of technologies which operate in this space. One category of technologies guarantees fair coexistence because the bonded channel uses Wi-Fi. So these technologies are LWIP and LWA. So Wi-Fi carrier is used in parallel with LTE carrier, and they coexist nicely, obviously, because the Wi-Fi is Wi-Fi, and it works nicely together with other Wi-Fi. So LWIP is not very widely used. It basically uses a tunnel over the Wi-Fi, but the drawback of that technology is that it actually alternates the path. So I'll send this packet over the LTE, this packet over the Wi-Fi, so it doesn't provide the gains that you really want to achieve. It's a software change only, so that's one of the beauty of that alternative. The other one is more attractive, LWA. So there you aggregate LTE carrier in LTE frequencies and Wi-Fi carrier in 5 gigahertz frequency band, and you get more throughput, more capacity. It uses those in parallel. As well, it has evolution. When WiGig comes more common, it can use the WiGig 60 gigahertz bandwidth, which is very large. And as well, it offers uplink. Typically, these alternatives are downlink oriented, but this LWA as well uses uplink. So traffic is split, so you get the double capacity. For some reason, this alternative, is it currently gaining a lot of attention or traction? But these are the fair, coexistent, guaranteed alternatives. Then here are the more commonly referred alternatives for unlicensed. So LTE U. LTE U was the early standard. It was a way to, it's not the 3GPP standard. 3GP standard is seen to take time, so industry wanted to move faster, and they came up with LTE U. And LTE U uses LTE modulation in 5 gigahertz band. So they will need to then share the 5 gigahertz band with Wi-Fi. So LTE U does not do listen before talk. It uses different technology there. I'll get into that in more detail a little bit later. It uses a technology called CSAT, which is basically duty cycling the LTE carrier based on some sampling for how much there is traffic in the band. So LTE U is used and allowed to be used only in certain countries, US, China, South Korea, for example, where listen before talk is not required. So it's a dual bearer, so you get all the benefits of the bandwidth. So this is the controversial alternative. And it's maybe not the direction the world is going right now. It was the early technology, which was deployed fast. It's being used, but I think the evolution is moving towards the LAA. And LAA is the one which is being widely used. So LAA, on the other hand, again, 5 gigahertz. In the 5 gigahertz band, there is a LTE carrier. It uses listen before talk, but it's not Wi-Fi listen before talk. And it's only based on energy detect, minus 62 dBm threshold, typically. So initially, it's downlink only, but as well, the LAA will have uplink as well. So it's a dual bearer, you get the full benefits. And goal of LAA has been that it doesn't impact more Wi-Fi than Wi-Fi would impact itself, other Wi-Fis in the same area. So this is the direction where the world is going mostly as of today. Then there is another variant of this technology. It's called multifier. And this is a standalone. So this is like Wi-Fi's enterprise. It doesn't require any carriers or any bearers in the licensed spectrum. It's operating completely in the unlicensed space. It uses a lot of same technologies as LAA, but but it's completely in the unlicensed space. So multifier is directly competing with Wi-Fi. Very similar use cases. It's not a 3GPP standard again, but it's developed by Multifier Alliance. And there are products coming out which support this. So these are the different categories. Wi-Fi protocol being used at Wi-Fi band, LTE protocol being used at Wi-Fi band, but using as well the LTE anchor, and then the standalone multifier, completely unlicensed, using LTE protocol with some coexistent technologies. Bands and power levels are very important here. So unlicensed is likely to use the Unit 3 band initially. It allows higher power levels, so up to 1 watt power levels. As well likely to use the Unit 1, which doesn't require DFS. It seems that the DFS bands are not the priority right now for unlicensed, so they will start from Unit 3 and Unit 1 mostly. Okay, so I'm not going to go through this much, but this is the Wi-Fi, how the CSMA works. So there is the listen before talk, and you have to do the energy detect, and you have to do the preamble detect. -62 for energy detect, -82 for preamble detect for 20 megahertz channel bandwidth. And then there's the back off and so on. You know this stuff. So how about then the LTE? So LTE is 100% scheduled. It does not listen before talk. It just schedules. Base station schedules frames. For uplink, it schedules transmission opportunities, basically slots. There are your uplink slots when you can transmit, and then the clients transmit. So it's completely scheduled. There's no sensing before sending. It includes OFDMA like AX. Standard will as well include OFDMA. It includes resource blocks, time slots. Full frame is 10 milliseconds. Subframes are 1 millisecond, and one time slot is half a subframe. It uses hybrid AirQ, which means that retries can be combined. So you have a retry, you have another retry, you can combine them. You get benefits from that, so it's different. Different channel bandwidths, 1.4, 3, 5, 10, 15, and 20. And then you can aggregate those as well together. So these are different, obviously. So one way to see this is that Wi-Fi is like a private car. You can leave when you like. There's no waiting time. You get going. You need to follow the traffic signs. There are, the beacons and so on, so you need to follow the traffic signs. You might hit traffic. You might get delayed. There are other travelers as well. So it's very flexible to deploy. You don't need necessarily frames or roads. You still will reach your destination. On the other hand, LTE is like a train. You need tracks, you need frames. It runs always. Even without any passengers, it will always run. Frames will be there, waiting for passengers. Passengers come in, they go into the frame or to the train, and then they get transported. So it has a schedule. You need to, be at the station when the train leaves. Otherwise, you will miss the train. So it requires the tracks. So you need to have those. You cannot have anything else in the tracks, otherwise there will be a collision problems. It's efficient for high volumes. Now, let's look at what happens when you put a car on a tracks. And you may expect it doesn't end well. Let's see what happens. So here is an example where Wi-Fi and LTE were kind of put on the same channel. LTE is using 5 megahertz channel bandwidth. You can see that in the spectrum there. And Wi-Fi is using 20 megahertz channel bandwidth. LTE has, in this case, a little bit higher power level. And you can see that later in the graphs as well. It's easier to see the difference between LTE and Wi-Fi transmissions. So this is using G only. They use G in this paper with SDRs, 2.4, just to investigate the protocol behavior. In this example, you can see LTE only, downlink control signal transmissions. So this is 10 milliseconds, a frame. You can see up here the time slots. So you can see these are uplink time slots. So clients could send here. These are downlink time slots with some control signals. So the power comes up, but there is no traffic, it goes down. But there is the frame structure. So uplink is empty. There is also some signaling time slots. You can see some traffic there. So power is here down during the uplink opportunities, and then downlink, you can see power up during the signaling. So this is LTE only. Now, this is what happens when you combine LTE signaling only with Wi-Fi traffic. So you can see the LTE signaling here, the higher power levels, control signals. Wi-Fi finds some opportunities here, for example, during the uplink time slots when there is nothing to transmit. So Wi-Fi is transmitting here. And then as well here, during the downlink time slots when the LTE is actually not sending any data. So that's how it looks. LTE control only, Wi-Fi sending data. Now what happens when LTE starts sending data? So it looks like this. So basically LTE takes over completely. So this is LTE uplink, this is LTE downlink. There is no downtime in between, it's fully scheduled use. During the signaling time slot, Wi-Fi finds a small slot to send something, and then that's about it. So in this case, if there is no coexistent mechanisms, then basically Wi-Fi will get disconnected. It doesn't receive anything, so it's disconnected. It doesn't detect the beacons or anything. It would get disconnected. Here are some measurement results from this paper. So Wi-Fi only without LTE interference, 28 megabit per second. Then here, LTE control signals alone. And the power levels now play a role here. So what is the power level? Is it above this energy detect level, or is it below that? That's critical. So when power level is below the energy detect level, LTE does not basically fall back. Sorry, Wi-Fi doesn't fall back. So throughput is higher. But when the power level is higher, Wi-Fi will fall back due to energy detect procedure. So, and this is with the traffic. So when there is data and when the LTE signal levels is above the energy detect level, then the throughput will be very low. Okay. So to address this, there are some coexistent built into the standards. So LTE U coexistent includes a couple of key topics. So channel selection. So when the LTE base station goes to a certain channel, it will select an empty channel. And it will use that. When it will use that, it's full duty cycle. If there are no open channels, it will go to the least used channel, and it will sample the channel occupancy with ED method, measuring the power levels there, with sampling periods from 10 milliseconds to 200 milliseconds. And then it will schedule duty cycle for the next couple of 100 milliseconds based on this sampling. So it will duty cycle LTE up, LTE down, LTE up, LTE down, and do the transmissions. But it doesn't do listen before talk, really. In addition, LTE U will use opportunistic secondary channel, meaning that if there just isn't any space, it might not decide to use the supplementary downlink at all. It might turn it off. So it will try to avoid, but it doesn't do listen before talk. It just duty cycles the transmission at the same time when there is other Wi-Fi traffic. Okay, so full duty cycle when no Wi-Fi traffic, and if there is Wi-Fi traffic, no empty channels available, it will duty cycle. LTE LAA, on the other hand, it has this goal that it should not impact more other Wi-Fi networks than any other Wi-Fi network would. So LTE LAA has two main principles for coexistence. So one of them is frame-based equipment. Another one is called load-based equipment. Frame-based equipment uses random backup of fixed contention windows, and load-based equipment use random backup and adaptive contention windows. Load-based equipment is more similar to Wi-Fi than frame-based equipment. So I think this picture better describes the principle here. So frame-based equipment, so if the CCA fails, and this is ED-based only, important to remember, it's only mandatory to have the ED-based only. So CCA fails, it will stay out of the channel for a fixed period. It will try again. If it's a successful channel available, it will occupy the channel for a fixed time period. And then it will again do, CCA fails, it will not occupy the channel. So this is a fixed period, but then there is the CCA process. But load-based equipment is smarter than that. So if the CCA fails, it sets a counter. Here in this case, it sets it 2. So there needs to be 2 times when it finds empty space there before it can transmit. And then it will transmit the frame. It will do CCA again. If successful, it can continue transmitting. And duration of this transmission is as well a variable, so it's not always fixed. Again here, it sets a random CCA. If it fails, it needs to stay back for 4 successful times of doing CCA. So these are also unsuccessful. These are 4 successful CCA, so it can again transmit the frame. So it's more like Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi Alliance put a lot of work in there to create a test plan to ensure that unlicensed and licensed can coexist in 5 GHz band. It was completed in September 2016. So they have a detailed test plan which you can view. It's available. It has a number of tests which test channel selection, connection availability, LTE U adapting to the changing conditions in the network, as well impact to the latency, packet loss, throughput, jitter, with different power levels, including as well, low power levels below the ED threshold. So that's a great test plan. I have not seen any reports yet really published showing compliance, that we are compliant with this test plan. No vendor, to my knowledge, has published such reports or even claimed that they are compliant with the test plan. Test plan is there. Okay. Then some products. So these technologies are actually already out there. So they are being used. So here is some information. So LTE U and LWA trials and plans. So LTE U is used by a number of operators in USA, China, South Korea especially, as well as Russia. So trials and deployments. So this is the controversial alternative, this LTE U. Duty cycling only. No listen before talk. Then LWA. This is the kind of alternative which sounds great, that Wi-Fi protocol only in 5 gigs and then LTE protocol in the license bands. But it has not yet so far taken off really well. So some trials. LTE U as well really became a stepping stone before LAA. So LAA has much more deployments. It's deployed in a number of locations in US and as well elsewhere. And seems to be the way to go. So unlicensed chipsets. So Qualcomm has been active here. And for example, Snapdragon 835 supports LAA and LTE U both. So depending what is available from the network, it will adapt to that. And it's used, for example, in Samsung Galaxy S8, very popular phone. It's hard to tell when the devices are using this because, to my knowledge, it's not indicated. Okay, some product examples here. So Spiraclite Wireless is one provider. They have as well, there's an access point, and they have actually this kind of clip-on module in addition to separate base station. Ericsson has here an example of product. Nokia announced multifier product, which will be available this year. Output power levels up to 1 watt. So that will be indoors. It will be competing with Wi-Fi from airtime. Okay, Wi-Fi design consideration. What does this mean? It seems that the key theme here really is how the channel is sensed with LAA. So it's energy detect only what is mandatory. Some vendors are implementing some additional capabilities. They might actually put a Wi-Fi radio in to do better job coordinating the traffic. But here is a comparison for receive side. So this kind of illustration is always good to see the kind of coverage difference. Obviously, this is open space, 6 dB doubles the radius. So energy detect is 62 here, and carrier sense is minus 82 here. So there is a large area beyond the 62. And LTE U does minus 62 only as mandatory. It might do, some products might actually do something else, but this is mandatory. Of course, LTE and the unlicensed doesn't detect either Wi-Fi traffic, so it will be impacted by Wi-Fi traffic to some extent, but usually it doesn't care, so Wi-Fi will step out. Power levels then, Wi-Fi typical power levels 14 dBm, 20 dBm, and when you kind of compare that to maximum power levels with unlicensed, it can transmit up to 1 watt. So there is a significant difference in the coverage area. So this is an important factor to consider. Wi-Fi design consideration, so likely to use Unit 3 and Unit 1, initially non-DFS. In practice, of course, retries will increase. It's hard to tell how retries, the rate control changes or behaves. If there is suddenly some traffic and then it's gone, and then the retry tries to kind of shift down because it didn't go through, and then next moment the interference is gone, so it could use higher rates, but there is some slowness in the rate control process. Different vendors, it will be different way they deal with these environments. It's hard to tell when you are using LAA, for example. What is the impact to the performance? So you really need to pay attention to this going forward because there will be more and more deployments. And you need to kind of stay on top of the performance aspects of your Wi-Fi. Okay, finally, key takeaways. So it's coming to the 5 gigahertz band. It's already there. At the minimum, it always adds more traffic to the band, which will reduce Wi-Fi capacity, overall capacity is not hit as much as the Wi-Fi capacity, but it does have a negative impact on Wi-Fi performance. And it doesn't do sensing to channel, it uses only ED. And the 3GPP ED doesn't alone guarantee safe coexistence or fair coexistence. And it can be made, they can be made coexist well, but it all depends how those parameters are chosen. What is the actual ED threshold which is being used? Wi-Fi Alliance came up with a test plan, but there is no need for type approvals, there's no need to publish the results, there's no need to be compliant with this test plan. And we have not seen any reports yet, at least I haven't seen any reports, how fairly different vendors coexist. So this unlicensed is a very important topic going forward. Need to pay attention to that. You may have 5 gigahertz traffic that you are not aware of from the unlicensed LTE. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.